So good morning. I'm Reverend Annie Allen with Northwind Institute, and we are our first class of the class that is being called Social Justice and Community Development. All of us in this class have taken the basic asset-based community development or faith-based community development course. In that course, we had three basic concepts. One was discovery, that we would have to identify the gifts and the assets within a local community, that the people themselves are rich with knowledge, rich with assets, and collectively can solve many of their own problems. So discovery, the discovery phase is where we spent a lot of our time. We did asset maps, we did community walks, we met with various stakeholders from business people to local residents to school teachers to parents. We can't talk about childhood development without talking with parents and teachers, not just teachers and administrators. So we spend a lot of time in discovery. And then once we identify all the assets in the community, the business people, the wisdom of the elders, the energy of the youth and their ideas and what their dreams and desires are, we then move towards, oops, I have to pin this. We then move from discovery to connections. So we start connecting the people who have similar goals and desires, similar interests, and through those, and build those connections into networks, into coalitions, into partnerships. And by building those partnerships with different organizations and different individuals, we then have the capacity to act. And then we can develop a school or a nursery or a hospital or healthcare or a road or a well or a cistern or whatever the need is in that particular community, or a safety watch, right? Citizens involved in combating violence. We can connect people together to come up with innovative solutions to solve problems. However, we generally focus on individual needs, individual problems of people, and we try to relieve those immediate needs. One of the things that we talk a lot about as well, which we usually don't spend enough time on, is moving from charity to justice. And how do we move from meeting people's immediate needs to addressing some of the more complex political, systemic, institutional, governmental systems and processes and policies that have created the situation where people are poor, that have created the situation where people have mental health issues, have created the system where people we look at and say are dysfunctional or drinking dirty water. But why is the water dirty?
Right.
Right. So we are moving this course in moving from charity to justice, looks at the bigger system and how to identify what those deeper questions are. So we move from looking at individual needs and individual assets to changing the systems themselves, and that the systems that create poverty and violence or environmental degradation or an economic system that doesn't work for everybody. So this course, we're planning to look at several things. I'm going to read to you our course description. We'll explore the connections between social justice and faith-based community development, which I just described a little bit. The history of social justice tradition in American churches, where I'm going to put a caveat here. I have a lot of resources for Gail and Robin for U.S. history, for everything from the Dorothy Day Catholic workers movement to the Salvation Army to back to the abolitionists and the Quakers and the abolitionists that fought against slavery. We have lots of examples from the United States where people of faith have been propelled to address systemic societal wrongs, injustices. And that can also be systemic racism, civil rights, food insecurity, environmental protection, and all of that. I'm going to give you an example. I was talking to a member of my church just recently about people in coming out of jail, about this problem of mass incarceration in the United States. And 25 to 35% of all African-American males in this country are under some form of the legal system, either parole or incarcerated or in jail or prison. And taking out 30% of the male population is devastating to Black communities where you have single mothers raising raising babies, and children without fathers, and and then when they are released, there's a lot of recidivism and all that sort of thing. So the woman in my church said, well, let's start a jail ministry where when a reentry ministry, when people come out, we'll help them find jobs and help them find housing and, you know, help to reintegrate them into the system. And that's a very typical approach to a lot of churches. And it's a good approach, and it's a necessary approach to help our brothers and sisters who have been incarcerated to come back into the community and find meaningful employment and become citizens. There's also a systemic issue that's much bigger.
Yes.
That requires an entirely different approach, which is why do we have a system in the United States that incarcerates more people than any other country in the industrialized world? Why do we have a system that disproportionately targets African-American and Latino men and women? And why do we have a system that penalizes young Black people for smoking marijuana, where white people in this country have been pretty much smoking marijuana since they invented it, and have not had that same impact of being arrested, having a criminal record, where if you have a second offense, then you are now incarcerated and can actually lose your rights to vote and your rights to citizenship. So that's one example where, as church people and people of faith, we look at helping the individuals when there's a bigger system out there that is in police racism within police departments, and racism in the judicial system, where a young Black man stands in front of a judge and gets sent off to jail, and the same white young man stands in front of the judge and gets sent to rehab. So what? Yes, go ahead, Caroline.
you look at what the statistics you have mentioned about Black incarceration, do we see the dynamics it has on the Black family? There is a book, I don't remember this, it's about the destruction of the Black family. The family is an entity that includes the man, woman, and children, basically, or two men and their children,
Right.
or two, whatever, but it's a unit.
Right.
To pull out part of a chain, you can see what has happened to the Black family. And because of the recent happenings after George Floyd, a lot of dynamics have come out that initially some people thought of and others didn't. When you think about the incarceration, you're just thinking about those people who have been incarcerated. We're not looking at the family that has lost a member. We are not looking at this individual, sometimes wrongfully, who now we are celebrating because he's out after 30 years. Yes, there's cause to celebrate, but why was he there in the first place?
First place.
And what are the ramifications? This person could have been a lawyer. It could have been the president of the United States. There's so many things that result in an unjust society. Last night, I was looking at 60 Minutes, and they showed this guy who's doing something similar to what we're trying to do. He's British. His mother is English. His father is Jamaican. He went into Kenya, Malawi, and Uganda and looked at the system and how unjust it is. They showed a woman who killed her husband because of violence. And the system had put into place for anybody who murders to be killed. And they had that system where, you hang, they hang. And this guy went into prisons and started a prison ministry where the prisoners start learning the law. And they even have mock trials and whatever. And you can see how they changed the system. For starters, they lifted the mandatory death sentence if you kill your spouse. That was one. A lot of the people who had been incarcerated were let free. But going back to Annie's saying that if you see something from an individual building up to a whole system, it is so important because, of course, we have to start with the individual. Why was this person incarcerated? Why are there many Black folks that are in? But we have to address the whole system because the whole system is what is causing all these people to be unjustly incarcerated. Thanks, Annie. I'm done.
You're welcome. And I want to continue. Oh, okay, hold on. Okay, here we go. I want to continue with another analysis. Many of our churches have food pantries. We have more food pantries. I live in a pretty affluent community and we have food pantries because there's people in need of food everywhere, particularly during COVID. A lot of people needed, basic foods in their homes. And I was in that position with my mother. We were on Social Security and disability and could just barely make ends meet. We could go to a local food pantry and get staples on, peanut butter and tuna fish and pasta and beans. And we all have these food feeding programs. Sometimes we'll cook and make lunches for people or breakfasts for homeless people and all of that. But we rarely take the time to say, why does this area have such food insecurity? Why are the grocery prices so high that people can't afford to eat them? Why are the supermarkets located in locations where people without cars can't get to them? So there's a whole other systemic issue around food security. Why do we have a food industry that is built upon profit where rich communities can eat organic and clean food from Whole Foods or Trader Joe's, and other communities have bodegas with the local grocery stores that don't serve healthy food, or fast food. And why are fast food places predominantly located in low-income areas? Well, you get the biggest amount of calories for the buck with fast food, but we also know that it's very unhealthy. So, and how can we look at the bigger system, food distribution, look at the food industry to identify why do we have so much waste and so much hunger all at the same time? So those are looking at the bigger issues. When we focus on a food pantry or a lunch program or something like that, we're looking at serving the immediate need of the individual. And we know that that's important. If your belly's hungry, you have to be fed. That I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing those things. We should be doing those things. But this course will get us looking at the why. And I wrote a couple notes somewhere, which I don't think I printed. But the notes that I had written was moving from meeting the immediate individual needs to being able to address the larger societal needs and the larger societal systems and process and policies, right? Take a different set of skills, a similar set, and we can use the ABCD skills that we've learned about networking, coalition building, so that we build people with power, because it's people with power who are wealthy, who make decisions about where to put supermarkets. It's people with power who support the prison industrial complex, that make billions of dollars of profit by keeping people in jail. If we ask those deeper questions, why is there so much violence? And Caroline and I had a discussion earlier today that violence is something that many communities face, that we may look at as a case study. And now I'd like to go into the structure of the class. Our first session was originally designed for U.S. Students to look at the rich history of that the Christian church in the United States, while some have supported slavery and some have, been very reactionary in terms of their prejudice and racism and all that, and homophobia and all that sort of thing. There's a larger percent of churches that have responded to societal concerns with compassion and advocacy and tenacity. And the book that we had chosen was Resist. And Resist is a compilation of, I would say, about a dozen or more, or way more, almost 19 different essays that are written by a wide variety of theologians and pastors and people of faith about a variety of issues. And it was a good, quick survey of all the types of responses that the churches have done in this country to resist oppression, resist domination of the rich and powerful, to uplift people who are in poverty and people who are disadvantaged. However, given that we have 4 units in this class, I really think it's important for Manus and Dennis to have a text, whether it's a book or an article or a case study that is specific to Malawi, that where you could see these principles, right? The immediate needs of people versus the why are people hungry, right? Or why don't people have meaningful work, right? Or why do people not have safe housing, or whatever the issues are. Or agriculture, I know, is another issue that, because of colonialism, many subsistence farmers who used to be able to have a goat and a pig and chickens and what have you, and grow vegetables to eat and have farm animals to sustain the community and the family, when that went away when industries came in and said, oh, we're only going to grow coffee, or we're only going to grow tobacco, or we're only going to grow rubber trees, or whatever the case may be.
The World Council of Churches and
Okay.
the All Africa Conference of Churches, they have done a whole lot of work on all the issues.
I'm not going to require you to read this entire book. You can choose which essays most interest you. And I think that would be a lot better for us to be able to read your responses to those. One that Caroline and I think would be important for both, for everybody, and if I can get a copy too, Dennis and Manus will do that too, is Resisting Violence, Creating Peace by Jack Nelson Pallmeyer. And he talks about violence, and violence is universal and a threat to everyone. I grew up in the Bronx, New York. I just had a friend move out of the Bronx because she witnessed a 15-year-old kid being shot and killed, like right in front of her. And we have drive-by shootings and murders. And when I pastored the Turning Point United Methodist Church in Trenton, New Jersey, I buried more young men in 2 years. It was just devastating and traumatic and heartbreaking. So violence is something that is across the board in every country, in every local community, one form or another. So I urge you all to read page 73. It's on page 73, chapter 7, for Gail and Michelle. And then you can choose another one within Resist. So that's session 1. That's kind of looking at a historical perspective. Are there any questions about you all have your syllabus in front of you, I assume? I don't know if I can record and screen share at the same time. Oh, I can.
Okay, good, because I didn't print mine. I only have it electronically.
Okay, and I have to pull it up. Just give me, okay. I don't want to pause I can pause recording without stopping it. Okay. Did. Okay. So let's go to the syllabus. So we've amended the first topic to include the World Council of Churches, the All Africa Conference of Churches, and Desmond Tutu to find how the church has responded in Africa to social justice issues. Topic 2 would be contemporary issues and Christian response, and choose one topic of concern in your ministry context. And for that, again, I'm going to ask you to pick a topic that is of concern in your community. For instance, in my community, we live in a Superfund site, basically. No one drinks tap water. We have raised bed gardens. The Passaic River to our west is polluted. The Hackensack River to the east is polluted. We're a few miles from Newark and the Newark Seaport. We're located in the Meadowlands, which used to be a beautiful marshland with thousands of sea turtles and fish and aquatic birds, and they basically concreted over most of it to make the American Dream Mall and Giant Stadium and a couple other arenas, and also, but they concreted it over because it was polluted from industry from the 1900s and the 1800s. It was just, it's a Superfund site. So the environment is of great concern to the area that I live in particular. And we can all, we have conversations about our recycling and reusing and all of that sort of thing, but those are the individual actions we can take. But the bigger actions are pressuring our legislators and government to pressure these companies to clean up what they've destroyed. And that is a bigger issue, speaking to the powers that have created the situation in the first place. That's just one example. Violence is a major issue. Mass incarceration is an issue. There's hundreds of poor education. There's hundreds of issues that all of you are concerned about in your individual